All sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. And so with these four immeasurable thoughts as the basis of how we relate to other living beings, let's listen and share in the Dharma this evening so that we can create the causes to become fully awakened Buddhas for the benefit of each and every living being. So let's make that our motivation for being together and sharing the Dharma this evening. Okay, then open your eyes, come out of your meditation. So before we actually start the talk again today, I just wanted to acknowledge that today was the day that Nelson Mandela died. And to really acknowledge his contribution to humanity, the way he went about changing the world by communicating with people through nonviolence. It's interesting that in his career, at one point early on, he started out actually advocating violence. And after his long stay in prison, he realized that that wasn't the way, and he began negotiations with the white racist government in South Africa. And the way he, brought about democracy and a peaceful transition from a racist society to an interracial society is really quite remarkable. If you think about the history of the world and how most conflicts are solved, this was really unique. Yeah? And I think he set a great example for all of us and is a great inspiration for all of us, to never give up, to do what we know in our own hearts is right, to stick up for our principles, and to do all of this with an attitude of nonviolence, and a willingness to listen to the other side, to compromise, to cooperate. Okay? So, if you haven't already today read something about his life, please do in the next couple of days. It's quite remarkable, what one person was able to do. Okay, so it's nice that there's people like that in our world, don't you think? Yeah? That we can look up to and say, wow, they did something really difficult and it came out good and they were working for the benefit of others and, they did so without clinging on to power and becoming egotistical. And so to take that as an example for ourselves. Okay. So our topic tonight is good teacher, good student. So I'm talking about something I know nothing about because I'm not a good teacher and I'm not a good student. But anyway, they gave me this topic, so I better say something. Yeah, and I'm going to say something within the context of the student-teacher relationship in Buddha Dharma. I'm not going to be talking about secular education and what is a good student and a good teacher. Because anyway, I really disagree with the way kids are streamed here. So I don't want to give a talk on my opinion of Singapore education. So I'll stick to the Buddha Dharma. Our relationship with a spiritual mentor is maybe the most important relationship we're going to have in our life. Yeah, because that's the person who we are choosing as our spiritual guide, with confidence in their ability to lead us on the path to full awakening. So we're the ones who choose our spiritual teachers. Nobody else chooses them for us. And it's really smart if we get to know people well before taking somebody as one of our teachers. Okay. And I say this because here in Singapore, well, not just here, but everywhere, you know, teachers come through and they're here for a short time and you don't know them very well and you go, oh, they're giving this high initiation and this marvelous, profound teaching and oh, I'm going to do all of this. They are my guru. And, you know, you make this commitment to somebody who you don't know. Yeah. And they're here for a short time, and then they leave, and then you say, now what do I do? Okay? So I think it's good to slow things down and get to know somebody over time and really check out their qualities, so that you make a good decision about who your spiritual teachers are going to be. And like I said, we choose our teachers. And if somebody comes up to you and says, oh, you are the perfect disciple that I've always been looking for, hold on to your wallet. Okay. And I say this, I'll tell you one story. It's rather extreme, but it's true. And there's many points to this story, you know. One of the points is how we easily succumb to flattery. Yeah. And how the moment somebody flatters us and tells us how wonderful we are, we lose our discriminating wisdom and just do anything they say. So I had a friend, and some Hindu guru came through town and said to my friend, who by the way had a PhD in physics. Okay, so he wasn't in a conventional sense a dummy, but he was not smart in the Dharma sense here. So this Hindu guru came by and said to my friend, just what I said, you're this intelligent disciple, you're so qualified for the path. I've been really looking for a disciple like you to be committed and to really learn and to progress. And this, you know, you're perfect for this. So my friend's going, You know, here's this great guru who thinks that I'm the ideal perfect disciple with so much potential. So he just completely devoted himself to this guy for a long time, until he realized that the guy was sexually abusing his 2 teenage daughters. And then he opened his eyes, he looked at what the guy was, and he left. Yeah. So, you know, he was gullible to being praised and didn't have much discriminating wisdom about choosing a teacher, and it turned out badly. Yeah. He later called that teacher charlatananda. Okay? You know, like charlatan? Yeah, you know charlatan? Charlatan is a fake. Yeah. So, charlatananda. So it was a good learning experience for him, but quite a sad situation. Yeah. So we do have to, you know, research about teachers and look at their qualities. And to look at their qualities, we have to know what qualities to look for. Okay? And so in the scriptures, you know, the Buddhas and the sages set out lists of qualities to look for in prospective teachers. So there's 3 levels of teachers, and each one has a separate set of qualities, but a lot of these qualities overlap. So in the 3 sets of teachers, first of all, there's our vinaya teacher. So that's the person who gives us refuge, the 5 precepts, the person who teaches us the 4 noble truths, the noble eightfold path. Then the second level is our bodhisattva practice teacher. So that's the person who's going to give us the bodhisattva vow and teach us the bodhisattva path, how to generate the altruistic intention for enlightenment, how to practice the 6 or the 10 paramitas, the perfections of far-reaching practice. And then the 3rd level is the tantric master. That's the one who gives us tantric initiation and tantric precepts. Okay? So we always should start first, you know, in our practice with vinaya, with ethical conduct, and learning the fundamental practices of the 4 noble truths, noble eightfold path, and so on. We don't start with tantra. Tantra is very, very advanced. Okay? So let me get my cheat sheet out of here. Hold on. Okay, so in the vinaya, that's the basket of teachings about the monastic precepts and the 5 lay precepts. You know, so the fundamental practice of abandoning negativity. So Shakyamuni, who was one great Indian sage, he gave the description of the qualities of a vinaya master. Okay? So this is the person, like your initial teacher. So it's somebody, first of all, who keeps pure ethical conduct. So this is actually quite important for all aspects of the path. You know, because if we choose a teacher, you know, we're going to model ourselves on our teacher's behavior. If we choose a teacher who doesn't have pure ethical conduct, then we won't either. And if our actions are uncontrolled they'll get even worse. Okay? It was quite interesting. One time, I don't know, people are so peculiar. Somebody had been coming to a series of talks that I gave. She also had been going to some other teachers' talks. And she came and she said to me, thank you very much for keeping good ethical discipline. And I thought, I wonder why she's saying that to me. And then I found out that the other teacher she was going to had gotten drunk and fallen down in the street. And I was quite puzzled why she continued to go back to that teacher, because I know for myself, that's not the kind of role model I need to improve my behavior. Yeah. So people are quite peculiar in what they do sometimes. Okay, so this is why I'm telling you like the qualities to look for. Yeah, and falling down drunk in the middle of the street is not one of them. Okay, so first, somebody keeps pure ethical conduct. Then second, somebody who knows what to practice and what to abandon on the path. So you hear this phrase a lot, what to practice, what to abandon. And that's an important phrase because as we are going along the path and we're trying to purify our mind and develop all of our good qualities to become fully enlightened, we need to know what to do and what not to do. In other words, what to practice and what to abandon. And so to learn that, we have to learn it from somebody themselves who knows. And for that person to know, they must have studied the Buddhist scriptures and done some practice. Okay, so it's not somebody who's just made up a path themselves. Yeah, in the New Age newspapers. Do you have New Age newspapers in Singapore? No? Okay. In the US, we have these New Age newspapers where people advertise, and all these spiritual teachers, there's one advertisement after the other for them. Okay? And come to this teaching, special price, only $99.99. It's a bargain deal this weekend. Okay? And often these are people who maybe mean well, but they've invented a path themselves. Yeah, you meet lots of people who invent paths, and then market them. So that's, again, not somebody that you want to take as your teacher if you're willing, if what you're looking for is to follow the Buddhist path. You want to choose somebody who is a Buddhist disciple who has learned themselves from a qualified teacher. Okay? And that their teacher learned from a qualified teacher going back to the Buddha himself. Okay, so you want to learn from somebody that's following a path that's been around for many, many centuries and that many other people have practiced and received the benefit of that practice. Yeah, you don't want to follow a path that somebody made up last Wednesday and is now marketing. Okay? So somebody who knows what to practice and abandon on the path, and somebody who knows the vinaya rites and procedures. Okay, so how to give the precepts, how to keep the precepts, how to purify precepts if you've broken them. Yeah, you want a teacher that has that kind of knowledge. Then third is a teacher. Thank you. As a teacher who has compassion for the sick. Okay? So that's an important quality of a qualified teacher, somebody who has compassion and especially compassion for people who are ill. Yeah, because we need a compassionate teacher, don't we? Yeah, because sometimes we ourselves are pretty obnoxious. So we need a teacher with some compassion for us. Yeah, not somebody who's going to judge us. Okay, then fourth is a teacher whose disciples are gentle and wise. So it's good to look at the disciples of a teacher, because if you follow that teacher, you will become like their disciples, more or less. You know, of course, some disciples are completely off the wall and they follow an excellent teacher, so that's not a universal statement. But just in general, you know, see what the other students are like. Are they kind people? Do they communicate well? Are they well-mannered? Or are they just, you know, loud and noisy and, you know, behaving purely? Are they kind people? Yeah? So look at the other students, and then you get some idea of, if you train with this teacher, what you're going to become like. Okay, next quality is somebody who helps their monastic disciples with the requisites for life and with teachings. Okay, so in the Vinaya, this is stipulating that if you're going to take disciples, then you need to be able to provide them with the four requisites: food, clothing, shelter, and medicine. So that doesn't mean that the teacher goes out and works a job to give these to the students, okay? But it means that the teacher is well established enough so that donations come in and the teacher shares those donations with the students, so the students have the four requisites and the student doesn't need to go out and work a job, okay? So the teacher is not stingy with food, clothing, shelter, and medicine. And also the teacher is not stingy with the Dharma, but, you know, is very generous and teaches the Dharma and wants to help the students as much as possible. Yeah, so again, if you're going to study with somebody, you want somebody who's going to share the Dharma. Yeah, because they say that if your teacher has not practiced well, they may not want to teach a lot of Dharma, because then there's the chance that the students will become better than them, or the students will know more than them. And it sounds like a funny kind of thing, like why would a teacher be like this? Yeah. But, you know, around universities, for example, you get a lot of competition among students and teachers, and sometimes, like, people will check books out of the library even though they don't need them, just so other students can't get those books and won't do as well as them in the class. Does that happen here in Singapore? No? Uh-oh. Oh, somebody's saying yes. Somebody says no. Yeah. Happens in the U.S. Okay, so we want somebody who's generous with the teachings, yeah, wants to help us. And then the sixth quality of a Vinaya teacher is somebody who's able to teach a Dharma topic at the right time to disciples who are capable of understanding it. Okay, so a teacher who has some sense of the disciple's capability and where that student is at in their practice, what they need to hear. And so therefore the teacher is able to give them that teaching at the right time, when the student is ready to hear it, when the student's receptive and so forth. Okay? So not somebody who teaches things way over people's head, or not somebody who, you know, doesn't teach more advanced teachings because they don't know them themselves. Okay? So those are the 6 qualities to look for in a Vinaya guru. Okay? The Vinaya teacher. As our practice progresses, and we have the fundamental knowledge of good ethical conduct and the 4 Noble Paths, Noble Eightfold Path, and so on, then we may want to learn the Bodhisattva path, the path that leads to full awakening. And to accomplish that path, we need to generate great love and great compassion for all other living beings equally. And then we need to practice 6 perfections, or 6 far-reaching practices. Okay, sometimes this list of 6 is expanded to 10, but the meaning is basically the same. So this kind of teacher, needs some of the same qualities as the Vinaya teacher, but also other qualities, because they're teaching an aspect of the path that is much more advanced. Okay? So in Maitreya's book, The Ornamental Sutra, or Sutra Alamkara, he gives 10 qualities of a Mahayana teacher. Okay? Somebody who's going to teach us the Bodhisattva practice. Okay, so this teacher's qualities, the first one is they have subdued behavior that comes about through ethical conduct. Okay, so again, here, ethical conduct, number 1 criteria. Yeah, how does that teacher act? How do they speak? Are they subdued, or are they just, crazy? Second quality is that they have some meditation experience, and preferably that they have attained shamatha, or serenity. Okay, so this is a person who's going to be teaching you meditation, so they need to have some experience if they're going to teach you. And then the third quality is that they are pacified through developing wisdom. So they have some nature, some awareness of the wisdom of karma and its effects, and also the wisdom of the nature of reality. So these first 3, ethical conduct, meditation experience, and wisdom, you might recognize as being the 3 higher trainings that the Buddha taught. Remember the 3 higher trainings? Ethical conduct, concentration, and wisdom. Okay, so somebody who has experience in those 3. Then 4th, somebody who has more good qualities than you do. Now that seems kind of obvious, why would you choose a teacher with less good qualities than you? If this person is going to be the one who leads you. So to pay attention to that, somebody who has more good qualities that you can really look up to and emulate. Then 5 is somebody who is enthusiastic to practice the Dharma and to benefit others. Yeah. So the idea, this person is somebody who's really practicing the Bodhisattva path themselves. They're enthusiastic to teach others the Dharma because they know that the Dharma alleviates suffering, and that when people learn the Dharma, it can help them so much in their lives and help them in their future lives. So the teacher is eager to teach the Dharma and eager to benefit others. So benefiting others through giving things, through offering care and concern, through offering protection and fearlessness. Yeah, so a teacher who is, really wants to help others. I remember one time visiting one of my teachers, Khyentse Jampa Tekchen. He's the one who wrote the book Insight into Emptiness and the book Transforming Adversity into Joy and Courage. They're both back on the table. But he was the one who gave the teachings that became those books. So I was visiting him once at Sera Monastery. And, you know, he was the abbot of Serajay Monastery. I mean, so he was high up there and quite well respected. And, you know, I went to see him and I was staying there a few days. And he insisted on cooking the food for me and another guest. You know, and I'm going, wait. You know, I should be cooking your food. You're my teacher. And he just completely refused, and he cooked our food. And then he insisted that we sit on chairs, and he sat on the floor. And this is like, wait, you know, Khyentse Rinpoche, this is the opposite of the way it should be. I should be cooking your food and sitting on the floor. You should be on the chair. You know, but again, he's just very humble, and he totally insisted. And there was no way to argue with him. You know, there's some people that you just don't argue with in this world, and he's one of them. And then, while we were eating dinner, this beggar came. And Rinpoche's room was upstairs. So this beggar kind of, you know, came upstairs and was looking in the door. And Rinpoche asked him what he wanted. And I guess he said he was cold. So Khyentse Rinpoche went into the next room, took one of his blankets, and gave it to this beggar. I mean, I was really kind of shocked. Yeah. Just at his complete, the generosity and respect he had for this beggar. You know, because many people in India just shoo the beggars away or whatever. But he gave him a nice blanket. Okay. So, enthusiastic to practice Dharma and benefit others. So he, you know, my teacher was quite a good example of that. I have another teacher who, he will talk to people at all hours of the day and night. You know, for whenever they have a problem, they need a consultation. He schedules appointments up to 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, maybe he only schedules them up to midnight, but people stay until 2. And then he starts his prayers again around 4 in the morning. Yeah, but again, completely enthusiastic to teach the Dharma. Or you see somebody like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who is now 78 years old, but he's traveling around the world. You know, I know some of the people in his entourage, they can't keep up with him. Yeah, they're exhausted, and His Holiness is, you know, going on from one place to the next. And he teaches wherever he is, and then in the break times he has appointments where he sees people. Okay, then the 6th quality is somebody who is learned in the scriptures. Yeah? So if you're going to follow the Bodhisattva path, you need a teacher who has studied the scriptures that teach the Bodhisattva path. Yeah? Somebody who's well learned, somebody who can teach you how to develop great compassion, somebody who can teach you how to realize the nature of reality, how to develop your concentration to a deep level. So somebody who really knows the Buddha's scriptures. Again, not somebody who's made up a path last week and is marketing it today. Okay, and the seventh quality is somebody who has the correct view of emptiness. Yeah, who has some realization or understanding of the selflessness of persons and the selflessness of phenomena. Okay, so someone who understands how things really exist and has a correct understanding of this. And I really emphasize correct understanding because it's actually not so easy to figure out how things exist. Yeah, it's not so easy. You really need to do a lot of study and contemplation to understand this. Okay? So of course we want somebody who has the correct view, because if our teacher doesn't have the correct view, we're certainly not going to learn the correct view. Mm-hmm. And then the sixth is, the eighth is somebody who is skilled in teaching, who is articulate, and who is able to explain the Dharma clearly. Okay? So somebody who you understand when they teach the Dharma. This doesn't mean that the person needs to be, a great public speaker. It doesn't mean that they need to be the teacher of all your friends. It means that you understand them when they teach. Yeah, and I really emphasize this because it can really vary. One of my teachers, his English is not so good. He coughs a lot. Some people go to his teachings, they can't understand anything. They say, "What are you doing?" and they walk out. And then other people, sit and listen, and they can understand and see that what he teaches is very profound. Yeah. So you don't pick your teachers according to who your friends admire, yeah, but who you can communicate with. And so somebody, when they teach, it goes into your heart. You understand what they're talking about. They can relate it to your life. It goes in your heart. You get some feeling like, wow, this is something important that they're telling me. I need to think about this and pay attention. Okay? Then the ninth quality is somebody who is very compassionate and always wishes to benefit others. Okay? So this quality of compassion on the part of a teacher, we saw this also with the Vinaya teacher. And I think it's really a very important quality, because as Dharma students, we sometimes don't behave so well. Sometimes we're inconsiderate, we're rude. I've seen people criticize their teachers or get mad at their teachers or look at their teacher in the eye and say no, or we generate wrong views, or, we just are obnoxious sometimes. Are you obnoxious, or am I only talking about myself? Yeah? When you think about how you relate to your teachers, are you sometimes not so, not so good? So we need a teacher who is compassionate, who's not going to get fed up and say, "Oh, this one is just too much." Again and again and again, I'm telling them to do this, and again and again, they do the opposite, and I'm just fed up. Get out of here. We don't want a teacher who's going to treat us like that just because we made mistakes. Yeah, we want a teacher who has a lot of compassion, who's forgiving, who may need to reprimand us and scold us, because our teachers will do that when we need it. but who scold us with compassion because they care and they want us to learn. Okay, and then the last quality is somebody who doesn't easily become tired or discouraged by teaching. Okay? So you want a teacher who's really going to be able to teach you the entire path, or at least whatever subject it is that you want to learn, who can teach you the entire subject, who in the middle of it isn't going to go, I'm just so exhausted, I want to go on vacation. You know, because actually in samsara you never get a vacation. Yeah, samsara is 24/7, so our practice better be 24/7. Okay. Now, they say, you know, really look for these qualities in a teacher, but it's hard to find teachers with all 10 qualities. Yeah. So if you can't find people with all 10 qualities, then there's some very important qualities to look for. Okay, basic qualities. So the first one is somebody who cares more about future lives than this life. Okay, so somebody who isn't all wrapped up in the happiness of this life, wanting possessions and fame and, status and everything like that. But somebody who really has deep conviction in karma and is trying to create the cause for a good future rebirth. Okay, so at least somebody who has that. Second quality of the at least is somebody who cherishes others more than themselves. Now, another important quality for a qualified teacher. You don't want a teacher that's egotistical, that's, wants you to be a disciple so that they have a lot of groupies following after them. Yeah. And you see that sometimes, Teachers, you ever seen that? Teachers that are kind of like pop stars, with groupies behind them, like little puppies. What can I do, Master? What can I do? And Master says, bring me this, buy me this, thank you for your praise. So somebody who cares a lot about the happiness of this life. So that's not the teacher we want. And also we want somebody who really cherishes others more than themselves. So that teacher will, really have our benefit in mind and is not using us. And then a teacher, another quality, who has more good qualities than bad qualities. Yeah? So that's kind of clear too. You want somebody who has more good qualities than bad qualities. Now, I want to point out what is not on this list of qualities of an excellent teacher. What is not on the list is charisma. Okay? And this is really important to think about, that charisma is not a quality of an excellent teacher. And I say this because, we are very easily influenced and easily swayed. And if somebody is very charismatic, it's so easy for us to follow them, even though they may not have good ethical conduct, or meditative experience, or knowledge of the scriptures, or compassion, or correct view. But we're kind of suckers for people who are charismatic, aren't we? Yeah? I mean, we look at sports stars, movie stars, wow, but what kind of qualities do those people have? Yeah? a lot of sports stars and movie stars, their lives are a total mess. And yet we idolize them, we think they're great. Yeah, you can have some charismatic politician who comes along and everybody, follows them, even though what they're saying is ridiculous. Yeah, so I'm really emphasizing this because I've seen people sometimes who will follow supposed teachers because those teachers are very charismatic, but the teachers are not really acting properly, and then those people wind up in kind of a messy situation afterwards. I also remember one time hearing that, one time in Bodh Gaya, Khensa Rinpoche, the one I was just telling you about, who cooked my food. So embarrassed about that. Anyway, he was giving a teaching at one Dharma center, and then there was some Western person who was there, who was very charismatic, and most of the people, the Westerners and the Asians, Singaporeans were there too, they all went to the teachings of this very charismatic Westerner, even though he wasn't really qualified, and they didn't go to Khensa Rinpoche's teachings because he only spoke in Tibetan and they had to listen through a translator. And that's completely the opposite way of how it should be. Yeah? So, we really want to look carefully. Then, okay, so the topic was good teacher, good student. Okay, so we did the teacher part, now's the student part. Yeah, because we think, okay, there's a checklist for teachers. I can interview them. Oh, are you good enough to be my teacher? Oh, yes, you have a check mark on there. Oh, you have a minus mark on there. I want only the best teacher. Yeah? We could get that kind of arrogant idea. So there are some criteria for good students too. And the thing is, we have to make ourselves into a good student. It's not that we're born good students. We have to cultivate certain qualities so that we become good students. So the first one is somebody who's intelligent. Now here by intelligent, it does not mean somebody with a high IQ. Because I just told you the story of my friend who has the PhD in physics, who was not too smart. Okay, so here intelligent means somebody who is willing to listen to the teachings and really think about them. Yeah, they're not just going to sit there and go, yeah, that sounds good, yeah, I believe, because that kind of person isn't really taking it in. They're not going to grow from the teachings because they're not really thinking about them. Okay, so somebody who's intelligent means somebody who is curious and wants to investigate deeper. Yeah? And is willing to study and contemplate and ask questions. Okay? So we should really be like that when we're learning, because if we're a student like that, we're going to learn a lot. If we're a student who just says, oh yeah, my teacher said it, I believe, we're not going to learn very much. Yeah. If we're a student who doesn't remember the Dharma teachings, yeah, it goes in one ear and out the other. Again, we're not going to be able to learn much or think about the teachings because we can't hold them in our mind. Yeah, so, we need to either take notes in the teachings or listen to the teachings multiple times so that we can hold the important points in our mind, and then go home and really think about what we heard and apply it to our life. Okay. Another quality to develop if we want to be good students is somebody who's open-minded. Okay. So somebody who thinks, who is flexible in their way of thinking, not somebody who's stubborn and just latches on to a certain idea and refuses to change. Okay? But somebody who's open-minded, who says, okay, well, you know, here this text is talking about this view of reality. This text is presenting the view of reality in a different way. I used to look at it this way. I wonder if this way could be the correct views. I need to think about it. I need to be open-minded. Yeah. Or open-minded when when our teachers give us instructions, and being able to listen to the advice of our teachers. Because sometimes our teachers will, challenge our ideas. They will tell us things we don't like to hear about ourselves, like you're lazy, or you're selfish, or you're stubborn, So we need to be open-minded and, be able to listen to things. Yeah, and not just dig our heels in and say, I'm right, you're wrong. Yeah. I had that happen to me one time. Yeah, I won't tell you the story. But the short version is I gave this person some advice about, they were in the middle of doing something that wasn't so wise, and I was suggesting something else that would help their practice. And they looked at me and said, no. And then just kept doing what they were doing. Okay. Yeah? So we need to be open-minded. And then we also need to be sincere and to be earnest. In other words, to take the Dharma seriously, to really have a sincere wish to learn. Not to be a disciple who's kind of flippant or takes the Dharma for granted, who comes when it's convenient and doesn't come for teachings when it's not convenient. Yeah, but somebody who's really earnest, who's going to make an effort to go and receive teachings, who will set up a daily practice, who will take time off for retreat. Yeah, and like I said, these are qualities that we have to cultivate. We may not have them now, but we can cultivate these qualities, and as we do, then we become a more qualified student, and we become more receptive. And then what our teachers teach us really goes in deeper, because we're open-minded, we're willing to examine, we have a good motivation, we're sincere, We don't want to just learn the Dharma, because our friends are doing it, or because there's some good-looking guy in the class that you want to meet. We're not learning the Dharma because we want to become a teacher ourselves and show everybody how brilliant we are. Yeah, we're learning it because we want to practice. Yeah. And I must say, sometimes I ask people, and in our Sravasti Abbey application, it says kind of, why are you interested in the Dharma? Why do you, people come to me, they want to ordain. And, I say, why do you want to ordain? And some people say, because I want to be a Buddhist teacher. And when somebody says that, my internal alarm goes, Mom, Mom, Mom. You know, to me, that's not the right motivation for wanting to ordain. Yeah, because you want to become a teacher. Yeah, because that sounds like it's a career. You know, you want a career as a Dharma teacher. And you want the respect, you want the offerings, you want the status, and none of that is a good motivation. You know, if somebody says, why do you want to practice the Dharma? Why do you want to learn? Why do you want to ordain? Your answer should be, because I want to attain full awakening, because I want to get out of cyclic existence, because I want to be able to benefit other living beings in the long term. And to do that, I have to improve myself first. That should be our motivation, you know, a sincere motivation, because we are basically always students. Until we become Buddha ourselves, we are students. Yeah. So you may sometimes be in the role of sharing the Dharma with others or teaching or whatever, but that's only something you do for a short time. Basically, we are all students from now until we become a fully awakened being. And so we should have that mind of being a student and not, oh, because I want to become a teacher. It's because I want to be a student and really learn and transform my mind and free my mind from its afflictions. I'm not coming to the Dharma to encourage my afflictions and defilements. I'm coming to the Dharma to learn the antidote so that I can get rid of them. Okay? So, that's a little bit, oh my goodness, I talked for a long time. A little bit about good students, good teachers. Maybe you have some questions and comments? We can have a little bit of a discussion about this. So please feel free to ask what's on your mind.
Good evening, venerable children. Thank you so much for the profound teachings. You mentioned about, teach the Dharma at the right time. Supposing you don't know when is the right time, you have the enthusiasm to teach the person, and say, for example, the teenager is just not willing to accept or not in the right frame of mind to accept your teaching at that right time. So how do you approach that particular incident?
Okay, so you're talking from the viewpoint of you want to help somebody in the Dharma and explain something to them, but you don't know when the right time is to explain it. Yeah?
Because the person doesn't seem to be accepting it well or not in the right frame of mind to accept your good intentions.
Okay. So, yeah, it's a tricky thing, isn't it? And we always have to check our motivation, because sometimes our motivation is sincere, we really want to share the Dharma with somebody. Sometimes our motivation is we want the other person to change. So we want to share this bit of the Dharma because I want you to change. I don't like the way you're behaving. I want you to change. So I'm going to share the Dharma with you and get you to change. Yeah, that can be in the back of our mind. And if that's in the back of our mind, our motivation isn't really so good, because we're sharing the Dharma to achieve a specific result. Yeah, and because we think we know what's good for this person and how they should change. But maybe we don't. and maybe this person needs some space. And if they feel like we're pushing them, yeah, then they're probably not going to listen. Yeah. If they feel like we're genuinely caring and we share, but we don't have an agenda, we don't have an expectation of how they should be because we're telling them this, then that makes it much easier for them to listen. Okay? So we have to be careful when we have an agenda. Yeah. Kind of like, oh, well, the teacher's giving a talk on anger tonight. Don't you think, honey, we should go listen to the talk on anger? Yeah? Wouldn't that help you to listen to a talk on anger? Yeah? So, me, I have no problem with anger. But my husband, my wife, they should go listen to the talk. So I'll take them with. Yeah? It's not totally the way it should be. Okay.
You mentioned just now that one should seek for a teacher who care about future life more than the present.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't the aim of a Buddhist practice to get out of samsara, which is not really the aim to look for a better rebirth, but to get out of the whole cycle? So if the teacher is great and has the capacity, shouldn't he focus on doing that in the present life itself?
Yes. Okay, so the question is that I said that the teacher should care more about future lives than this life. And she's saying, actually, shouldn't the teacher's motivation be to get out of samsara in this very life themselves, not just to get a better rebirth? Yes, definitely. Yeah. But if the teacher's not able to get out of samsara, if you're not able to get out of samsara in this lifetime, at least to make preparations for future lives in order to have a good future life. And especially, I think, it isn't so much the aspiration for a good future life as it is somebody who really respects the law of karma and its effects. Does that answer your question okay?
Yeah, I have two questions actually. The first one is about one of the points that was mentioned to search for a good teacher. He or she should have a right or correct view of emptiness. So I was wondering, as a student, how would I know that this teacher has the correct view?
Oh yeah, okay. Okay, so one quality is that they have a correct view of emptiness. How do I know if they have a correct view or not? We do some study ourselves, and we listen to excellent teachers, and in that way we can get some idea about the Buddhist view of emptiness. Okay? And so then we can see if that teacher is teaching according to the general correct view. Okay? His Holiness the Dalai Lama recommends that people take time and, listen to many talks from a teacher before taking them as their teacher. And he says to see if they teach according to the general Buddhist positions on certain topics. Okay? So to know what those are, then you have to do some study. Yeah? Of course, it doesn't mean that we have to have completely the perfect view in order to know if somebody else has completely the perfect view, because then we wouldn't need to learn from them because we would already have the correct view. Okay? But we have to have some idea of what the, Madhyamaka view is, and to see, is that person teaching that there's a truly existent self, or is that person teaching that, the self does not exist in the way it appears? Okay?
And can I ask a second question? It's just, I find it hard to tell sometimes when is it, as a student, I'm being open-minded, or am I starting to doubt the teachings or the way the teacher is explaining something to me? And I was wondering if you could...
Okay, that's a good question. When are we being open-minded, and when are we actually beginning to doubt? Because doubt, there's three kinds of doubt, and one kind is the doubt inclined towards the incorrect, understanding. Well, actually, it's not an understanding if it's incorrect. Okay, and that kind of doubt becomes a hindrance in our practice. So, I think you can tell a little bit by the texture of your mind, or the flavor of your mind. And I know I'm describing it very vaguely. But when we are curious, when we're interested, when we want to learn, and it's like, I don't really understand this, but I really want to understand it. Yeah? Then you're being open-minded. Okay? Doubt comes in when you go, well, first of all, when there's kind of a cynical mind that says, I don't believe this stuff. Maybe it's true, but highly unlikely. So that kind of cynical mind, then you've gone over to doubt, the wrong kind of doubt. Or if your mind is just making a lot of questions, but not really seeking answers. Yeah? When our mind it's like, well, I don't really know that if there's future lives or not. So, explain it to me. Make me believe that there's future lives. Yeah? So, we're not really sincere. And, that's an indication, I think, of doubt that we're not really wanting to learn. We're just wanting to throw out one question after another question after another question. Okay, without really listening to the responses. Okay, so how do we define a teacher-student relationship? Does it need some agreement, or can I just assume a venerable, or assure a venerable to be my teacher? Then how should I treat my teacher? Okay, that's a good question. Yeah? The one way that you become somebody's student is if you take one level of precepts with them. So if a teacher gives you refuge and gives you the 5 lay precepts, that person becomes one of your teachers. And you can have more than one teacher, that's fine. Yeah? If you take the bodhisattva vows from someone, that person becomes one of your teachers. Some people, prefer to ask somebody, if kind of like, will you be my teacher? But, in my case, okay, when I first learned the Dharma, I didn't know anything. I just stumbled into this retreat. I didn't know the difference between Hinduism and Buddhism, or I didn't even know there were different traditions of Buddhism, or within Tibetan Buddhism, there's different kinds. I didn't even know who the Dalai Lama was. I didn't know anything. Yeah. But what I did know is what this teacher said when I thought about it. First of all, it made sense. And when I practiced it, it helped me in my life. I knew that from my own experience. So I kept coming back. What they said made sense. When I practiced it, it helped me in my life. I kept coming back, kept coming back, kept coming back. And then I think we must have both figured out that I was his disciple. Yeah. So there's different ways to do it. then in terms of how you treat your teacher, it's up to you to figure out what kind of relationship you want to have with a teacher. Some teachers you may want to be very close with. Some teachers you may not want to be very close with on an interactive level. Some teachers you may not be able to be very close with because they have thousands and thousands of disciples. Yeah, so you can, like with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, you can still be his student even though there's thousands of people there and he may not even know your name. Yeah, but you receive teachings and you think about them and they help you and you have that strong connection and some feeling of devotion and trust and confidence. Okay? So it's primarily an attitude that we try and cultivate with our teachers, one of trust and confidence, and then certain teachers we will be close to, so we may offer them service and help them with their various projects that they're doing to benefit sentient beings. We take care of our teachers, we make offerings to them. The best thing we can do is really listen attentively during teachings and then practice what we hear. Okay. Go on to the next one here. Would you advise us to have more than one teacher? It depends on you. Some people like to have just one teacher, some people like to have many teachers. Sometimes you may have many teachers because different teachers may have different specialities in what they teach, or different teachers may be more accessible. Like I said, some of your teachers you may not be able to see personally, but then you cultivate relationships with other teachers who, don't have as many students and who you are able to see personally. Yeah. So it really depends on you. Yeah. Some of your teachers you may ask more specific Dharma questions. Other teachers you may ask practice questions. It kind of depends. And then this person said, how do you know if you found the right or perfect teacher? Well, what is the definition of perfect? Yeah? Our definition of perfect is somebody who does what we want them to do when we want them to do it. Right? Somebody who is everything we want them to be and doesn't do any of the things we don't like. Well, that is not one of the criteria for a good teacher. So trying to find a perfect teacher according to our samsaric definition of perfect is useless. Okay? Yeah? Okay. I have a friend who is learning from a teacher who is classified as a Buddhist cult by some websites. How do I convince my teacher to reconsider learning under this teacher? How do I convince my friend to reconsider learning under this teacher? Yeah, that's a hard one when you see one of your friends following somebody who's controversial. I once asked this same question to one of my teachers, and I'll share with you the answer that he gave. He said, if this person has not yet become a disciple of that teacher, but is just going to classes and listening with them, but has not actually formed a relationship, then you can say to that person, this teacher is controversial, and here you should go to these websites and read, what's happening. And not just read it, but check out if what's being said on the website is true or not. Yeah? And so you can say that to your friend, you know, this person's controversial, I think it's good if you're careful. Please, you know, investigate some more, learn more about them before you become their disciple. On the other hand, if that person is already that teacher's disciple and feels a lot of faith and trust in that person, then you don't say to them, oh, that person is, you know, not so reliable, or they're very controversial. You know, you just let it be. You may encourage them to go to other teachers also and help them, you know, read books by really qualified teachers, encourage them to go to other teachers, but you don't directly criticize that teacher, because that, if somebody has faith in them, you know, until they kind of get a better understanding, it's not good for you to do that. Okay, but you keep the door open in the sense that later on, if that person realizes that they've been following somebody who's not really such a qualified teacher, and that person comes to you again and asks you for help, then you're ready to help them. Okay, so you don't go with them to that other teacher, to that cult or whatever it is. But if they need help afterwards and come to you, then you help direct them towards a really good teacher or somebody who could give them some advice, because they, you know, are now confused in their practice and they're trying to figure out how to relate to that old teacher and how to transition and find some wiser teachers. Okay? Can you give an example of the nature of reality? Well, things appear to us as if they exist objectively out there, independent of our mind. Yeah, don't they? When you walk in the room. Okay. Is this a clock? Hello? Is this a clock, right? Yeah. Does it look like, I mean, it's a clock out here, right? Yeah. Is this clock related to your mind in any way? How do you perceive it? Is this clock related to your mind? No, it's a clock out there. Isn't that the way it looks to you? It's a clock out there. Any idiot who walks in this room knows it's a clock, because it has the nature of clock. It's radiating clockness. Okay? That's the way it looks like, you know, how it looks like to us, how it exists. But when we check the way it appears to us to exist as some kind of external solid object out there, does it really exist that way? Yeah. Is it a clock from its own side? You know, because if it is, if it's truly a clock with some kind of nature of clockness, we should be able to find exactly what is the clock within this thing, shouldn't we? I mean, if it's a clock, you should be able to find the thing that's the clock, right? Yeah. Okay, so what exactly is the clock? When we say the word clock, what does that word refer to? Does it refer to the face of the clock alone? Does it refer to, if I could take it out, you know, apart, is the snooze button the clock? You know, when we start to look, what exactly is this clock? You know, instead of it becoming clearer what the clock is, we're left with more questions, aren't we? Like, yeah, it looks like it's a clock out there, objective. But when I look and I try and find out exactly what is the clock, I can't point to anything. Okay. So then we begin to get some idea that the way the clock appears to exist is not the way it actually exists. That the clock appears to be out there, objective, independent, but actually the clock depends on many parts, it depends on causes and conditions, and it depends on our using it to tell time and giving it the name clock. Okay? So the clock exists dependent on many other things that are not clocks. Yeah. Even though it appears to be a clock out there by itself. Okay? So there's some deception, yeah, in the way things appear and the way they exist. So that's just 5 minutes. We have to really go into this in much more depth if we're going to, but I think that will suffice for right now. Okay, so this clock is telling me it's time to stop. Okay, oh, there's one more question. This will be the last one.
Hi, Venerable. Now I'm actually reading a lot of Buddhist scriptures in terms of the 3 traditions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I would like to ask, how do I know whether I'm questioning, I'm using my wisdom to question, versus whether am I being open to accept the teachings of the different traditions, because I'm still not sure exactly which tradition would be good, that I should follow, that I would follow.
Okay, so you're exploring various Buddhist traditions and you're not sure which one to follow, and you're wondering if you're being open-minded in learning about them. Is that it? Which tradition to follow? That's going to depend upon kind of what rings a bell within us. Sometimes certain approaches to the teachings really resonate with us more than other approaches do. Sometimes, I think like kind of finding a teacher and finding a tradition, I think that it kind of happens together, because there's somebody who's teaching you the Dharma, it really resonates, they teach you how to practice, you do it, that really helps you. Yeah. So I think by kind of experimenting and trying different things, and then you'll see what really works for you. It's, the different traditions, there's sometimes different emphasis, on different things. So you have to see kind of what emphasis, really rings a bell with you. Yeah. In choosing a tradition, it doesn't mean that you reject the other traditions. Okay, this is quite important. Yeah, because all these teachings come from the Buddha. So it's not like we're saying, this is the one pure, best tradition, and we become a born-again Buddhist, and, everybody's got to follow my teacher and my tradition and the scriptures that we follow, and if you don't do that, you're wrong. That, some people who have that kind of view are actually quite ignorant, because if you criticize any of the traditions with the teachings that the Buddha taught, you're criticizing the Buddha. So how are you going to be taking the Buddha as your teacher? Okay? So it's quite important, to really have an open mind. And you may be primarily attracted to one teacher or one tradition, but you still have respect for other teachers and other traditions, you know. And after you get really grounded in the tradition that speaks most to your heart, you may find it very helpful to learn more about the other Buddhist traditions and to see how the same points are made but in slightly different ways. Okay? So it's important to really remain respectful and open-minded, you know, and at the same time be able to tell what really hits our heart and is helpful to us. You know? And like I told you, you know, when I started, I didn't know anything about different traditions. Nothing. Okay, all I knew is that what this teacher was saying made sense when I checked it out logically, and when I practiced it, it helped me in my life. And looking back on that, I think those were good criteria to use, you know? Because I didn't care which tradition it was, you know, and I didn't care what my friends were following because I was the first one, you know, kind of to discover the Dharma and these, you know, whatever friends I had. So, you know, it's just kind of how it happened.